Hey everyone, my name is Joe, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to use the Google Sheets query function with multiple tables. Alright, so let's get into it. First, I think it's a good idea to show you how Google Sheets looks at multiple tables. When there's two different ways that it kind of looks at tables. And so the first way that you can, or well, how you look at multiple tables. First, you have your equal sign, and then we open up a curly bracket and we can select our table, right? And then you can hit comma and you select your next table, and then you hit your comma, and now you can select a third table. And then you close your curly bracket and you hit enter. And what this does is it takes all those three tables and it puts them side by side. And it's a little bit of a mess. I'm sure that there's a use for this, but I really don't like this format. Um, and another thing that's a requirement of this is that each of your tables has to have the same number of rows, right? So each table here has 6 rows of data, and so they kind of match up. The other way to look at this is to replace your commas with semicolons like this. We hit enter, and it brings those tables all together, nice and neat. Okay, so and this is kind of the way that we want to look at tables. This is how we want to query tables, is in this particular format. Um, so now we're just going to copy that and then delete everything. And we're going to look at how we put that into a query function. So we hit enter and query and tab to autocomplete that. And then that string that I had used to pull the three tables together, I'm just going to paste that in there. See, now you can see I've got my first table, my second table, my third table in there, and comma to close out the data set. And then we're going to do a double quote and type in select and all, and close double quote, close a parenthesis, and hit enter. And it looks exactly the same as when we just or pull the tables together, exactly the same. Now, one thing that you can do, right? So since these are cell references or range references, you can reference ranges on multiple tabs. And say that you have a data set where the information automatically comes into your spreadsheet and you don't know exactly how large these ranges should be. And so you just kind of select the entire column, which is perfectly fine. Um, but what you'll end up with is a scenario where you have empty rows. So let me show you what that looks like to begin with, right? So let's say 34. All right. So now I've got three tables, and then we have some empty rows at the bottom of each of our tables. We hit enter, and those empty rows are brought in with the query, okay? So if you're just running a simple query where you want to combine all of your data, you can do that. So what you can do is you can say, clean this up, just put in a where clause. And so where column with a capital C, lowercase o-l, and you can pick any column really. This is 1. Oh, I forgot to put a null in there. So where not column 1 is null. We hit enter, and then it cleans up all of those empty rows. And so it's just saying wherever you find a row where the column 1 is empty or null, I don't want to see that. Okay. Now, you might have noticed that we used column 1 here, column 1, instead of A, and I'll show you why. So what's happening here is if we were to put in a capital A, like we would with a normal single table query, it gives us an error. And the error is that there is no column A. And so what's happening is that Google Sheets is taking your three tables right? 1, 2, and 3. And it's putting them all together into another table. Now you could kind of think of that as like a pseudo table or a view table or however you want to call it. But when it does that, it takes away the column names, right? Because this table may be over here and starts in column L, and this table may be somewhere over here and starts in column I. And so how would you reference column A but get the first column in every table? So it combines everything into a pseudo table, and it just simply labels the columns column 1, column 2, and so on and so forth. So we call these by column, COL with a capital C, and 1 for the first column. And we get that in there. And then from there we can narrow our or constrict our data down. We can say, where column 5 is greater than 25. Oh, we got an error. What happened? Oh, I forgot the and. So what we're doing is we're putting two constraints into a where. Okay, so you only call out the where clause once, and then this is our first constraint. So we're calling where column 1 is not null, and where column 5 is greater than 25. All right, so there it is, nice and clean. So what happens if we looked at the tables in the other method where they're laid out side by side? We get an error. So what's happened here is that it says array row parameter 2 is mismatched. Row size expected 10, actual 9. And so what it's saying is that in our first table here, we have 10 rows, right? There's 6 rows of data and then 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, empty rows. So that's 10 total. Down here, we have 9 rows of data. And then on our third table, we have 10 rows of data. Even though these are empty, the array function says that there are 10 rows of data. So we could modify this and make all these rows equal by increasing this middle one to have 10 rows. And then the function works, but it gives you weird results, okay? So here's information from table 1, information from table 2, and information from table 3. But you'll notice that $2 is definitely less than 25. And so what's happening here is that when it's creating that pseudo table, all of this data, all 10 rows of this data is in that table. And then it's only looking at column 5, right? Which in this case is column K. And it's only pulling that from that first row of data. So we can verify this. We can say, well, in our first table, which rows are over 25, and that's this one here for 3351 with Yvette McGee, and then our third row here with $100.57 with Diana Rosario. And then that should correspond with, so that's the second and third rows there, and that corresponds with our next set of data, this $59.7581 comes from our second and third rows on our second column, and then our second and third rows on the third table as well. $2 and then 67.16 is what we get over here as well. And so what's happening here is it's looking at these tables side by side and then only looks at this set of data. It doesn't consider the other sets of data, and then it returns that entire row. And then I'm sure that there's some use cases for that. But I think most people are going to want to look at it like this, with the semicolons in between their table sets. All right, so there you go. That's how you can use the query function with multiple tables. You can have these tables on multiple tabs. They can be in multiple places on individual tabs, however you want. All right, guys, you all have a wonderful day.